Good morning, students. Hope you all are staying safe at home. Today, we will be starting a new chapter of political science, chapter 3, the working of the state government. As we have already learned that in India, there are three levels of government: local government, state government, and the central government. In the last year, we have learned about local government. This year, we will be learning about how state government functions. So, let us learn about the structure of the state government. The state government consists of three branches or bodies, we can say: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Now, let us move on to the legislature. In a democracy, it is the body which makes laws. It usually consists of two houses, the Vidhan Sabha and the Vidhan Parishad. Now, what is Vidhan Sabha? Vidhan Sabha is also known as Legislative Assembly, which is the lower house of the legislature. Here, the members they are elected directly by the people of the state in assembly elections, and these elective representatives they are known as MLAs, that is, members of Legislative Assembly. Every MLA, each MLA we can say represents their own constituency, and the party which wins the majority seats in the assembly they form the government, and it is known as ruling party, while the other members they form the opposition party. The term for Vidhan Sabha is of 5 years. Now let us learn about the Vidhan Parishad. The Vidhan Parishad or Legislative Council is the upper house of legislature. Here the members are not elected directly. That means they are elected indirectly by members of Vidhan Sabha. Local bodies, high school teachers and graduates in the state. Some members they are nominated by the governor, and here a member of Vidhan Sabha is elected for a period of 6 years. Here, not all the states are having Vidhan Parishad. As of 2018, only 7 out of 29 states were having Vidhan Parishad, and the state legislatures which are having only one house are known as unicameral, while with both the houses they are known as bicameral, that means 2. Okay, now let us move on to the executive. It is the branch of the government which enforces laws which is made by the legislature. It consists of the governor, the chief minister, and the council of ministers. The governor is the constitutional head of the state. Here, he is only nominal head and not having any of the right to say in the functioning of the government. He or she is appointed by the president on the advice of the prime ministers, and they hold the office for approximately 5 years, for the period of 5 years. The leader for a party which claims majority, or we can say the leader of the party which gains majority in the assembly, is appointed as chief minister of the state. CM is actual head of the state. Now, let us learn about the judiciary. The function of the judiciary is to interpret the law. The highest judicial body in the state is the High Court, which is headed by Chief Justice, and it protects the fundamental rights of the people. It settles disputes also, and on the other side, it punishes the people who breaks the law. So now let us learn about High Court, as there are several subordinate courts also where cases are being taken up. So rather than High Court, we can also go up to District and Sessions Court, Provincial Courts, and Nyaya Panchayats. Now let us learn about the workings of the state government. The three bodies of the government, which is the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, they work together. They together work to run the government. They also keep the check, and they ensure that the other bodies they do not misuse their powers. So after the elections for legislative assembly, the governor they invites the party which got majority of the seats to form government, and the leader is appointed as chief minister. So the chief minister then selects a few people from his or her party who take some role of some ministers who are formally appointed by the governor, and then together with the chief minister and other ministers they form council of ministers. So different portfolios, or we can say different department like agriculture, like finance, health, education, public work, all these portfolios are being assigned to the members of the Council of Ministers. The council looks after day-to-day administrative functions of the government, advises the governor on important issues, and helps them to take policy decisions. Here, the Council of Ministers and the Chief Minister are answerable to the legislature. Let us learn about the main functions of the Chief Minister. The Chief Minister is the leader of the Legislative Assembly. As such, his or her decisions on the running of the state are final. The Chief Minister is the head of Council of Ministers, and they allocate portfolios or departments to the ministers, and then they can also ask them to resign if it is needed. All the policies, programs and activities of the council, they are being monitored by the CM. If CM resigns, the whole council has to resign. The Chief Minister also functions as the advisor to the governor, as he or she has to convey all the decisions of the council to the governor. Now let us learn about the making of laws, as the Legislative Assembly makes laws on the issues that are on the state list, and to make laws, the Assembly, they have to follow a certain procedure. First of all, a minister or an MLA, they introduces a bill or a draft of the law either of the house of the legislature, where it undergoes 3 readings. So in the first reading, the MLA or minister explains that why the bill has been initiated, what are the objectives of the bill. In the second reading, the bill is discussed clause by clause, and if disagreement is there, the bill is referred to a committee who makes certain changes in the bill according to the disagreements of all the members. In the third reading, the bill is put to vote, and only a simple majority is needed to pass the bill. Same procedure is followed in the second house for the approval of the bill, and then finally the bill is sent to the governor for her or his signature. Here the bill, it becomes an act only when the governor signs on it. One more thing, the governor cannot reject a bill. Only they can send the bill to the origin just for suggestions, for change. Now let us learn about factors involved in distribution of resources and services. As India is rich in natural and human resources, planning how the resources of the country can be used in most effective way is one of the main jobs of the government. Till 2015, the jobs was done by Planning Commission through its 5-year plans. In 2015, the government set up the National Institution for Transforming India, that is Niti Aayog. One of its main objective of the body was sustainable development, which means that development should be done in this way which meets the need of the present generation without affecting the ability of future generations. Like this, central government, the state government also has certain aims to develop the state in most effective way to use the resources what they have. Land as a resource is one of the point where each state government has to ensure that the resources are used judicially in all sections of society, and every of the section gets equal opportunity to access them. One of the most important resources is land. As land, it is limited in supply, and there are many of the users who are competing for the ownership of the land, and because of this there is constant conflict between the people. So the constitution stipulates that the subject of land reforms should be under the state government. Let us see how the state government manages land reforms. The first is, why do we need land reforms? As in India, the distribution of land resources, it is very unequal, especially in rural areas. Some of them are having a major part of the land and some are landless. So it's very unequal. The lack of access to fertile cultivable land, it is one of the main reasons for poverty of the people in rural areas. And since the primary occupation for more than 80% of Indian population was agricultural based, land reform was prioritized after India gained independence in 1947. As most part of the rural India, rich landlords owned large tracts of land on which there were tenant farmers who were working, and they paid taxes or rent to the landlords for the use. The plight or the condition, we can say, of the tenant farmers was miserable, was very very bad, and they were not having any of the security of tenure, the time period, and they any time the land could be taken away from them. So they were very hesitant to make any improvement in the land, and which led to falling yields, okay, pushing the tenant farmers deeper into debt and poverty. So the state government was trying to correct this gap between the poor landless peasants and the rich farmers. So by passing laws, they tried to protect the landless and marginalized people, which was one of the way where they enforced those laws and ensured that the violation of these laws does not go unpunished. Means if anyone violated such kind of laws, they would be punished by the law. Now let us learn about the land reforms in Odisha. As the state of Odisha was one of the first to pass several path-breaking laws which aimed to the distribution of land in an equal way to ensure that the landless peasants could have their own land. So there was Land Reforms Act in 1960 which gave them rights to the tenants, and it encouraged proper and effective utilization of the land, where the amendment of this act came in 1973, which put a ceiling on the amount of land a family could hold. So if there is a family, as per this act, if there is a family of 5 members, they could not own more than 10 acres, and if there are more members in the family, they could only access 18 acres of land, and rest all the land should be redistributed to the landless peasants. And here the priority was given to the landless widows and unmarried women who should have the land, who can work on the land to make themselves more independent. So the aim of the act was to make the distribution of land in an equitable and to ensure that the society should be using the resources in such a way that the weaker sections also get some part of the resources. Here the next one is the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006, which was passed by Government of India, who sought to protect the rights of landowners belonging to scheduled tribes. This act was passed by the central government, which remains the responsibility of state government to implement this. Here the laws did not yield the desired result because the rich landlords did not agree to transfer the land on paper, and because of this there was a confusion of ownership of the land, as there was no records, there was no transfer of ownership, and because there was no transfer of ownership, the land was not given to the landless. It was not possible. So the land which people gave up was usually of poor quality, and peasants who started cultivating it, it was very difficult for them to cultivate yield from it. And Odisha, as it is a mineral rich state, there was vast tracts of agricultural land, and which came under mining companies. So tribal areas was affected by this, and agricultural land was diverted from food crops to cash crops like biofuel, which was profitable to the government also. And because of that, the small farmers who were dependent on the land, they were not having enough food to eat as well. They were suffering from a great blow. Now the next is the road ahead, as because of this government intervention also a large section of the population, especially in rural areas, they were not getting their rights, and because of multiple uses of agricultural land, the Council of Ministers in the state government, they planned their policies and actions carefully, keeping in mind that the demands of different groups like industrialists who want to set up factories are different, mining companies are having the different objectives, farmers are having the different, and small or marginal farmers who depend on their land for their daily survival is different. So the state government's responsibility is to strike a balance between the demands of different interest groups and to maintain a balance and to distribute the land in such a way that everyone, okay, like industrialization, mining, commercial agriculture, every of the activity should be done, and none of the persons should suffer. It should not suffer, and it should not affect their lives and livelihoods in the particular region. So students, with this we have reached to the end of the lesson. I hope that you have understood the lesson. Read the same from your textbooks, and if you have any doubt, feel free to ask. Till then, keep learning and have a good day ahead.